Hello, my name is Judy, and welcome back to the channel. I love travel, history, geography, and exploring how the elements shape people's lives. Today we're visiting Angers, located at the western edge of the Pays de Loire. The city actually dates back to the days of the Roman legionaries, but as Roman power waned, as it did throughout all of France, Angers fell into decline. It experienced a revival under the influence of Christianity, only to be destabilized again by various noble revolts, wars, and Viking invasions. To say that Angers has had its ups and downs, much like the family that so long dominated it, is a generous understatement. During the medieval period, Angers played an important role as a center of power for the Counts of Anjou, who eventually evolved into the Plantagenet family. The first of this lot was a man named Fulk I, also known as Fulk the Red, who became Count of Anjou around 970 CE. Fulk was known for his military prowess and territorial acquisitiveness, traits that would continue through the family line for generations. Fulk I is credited with the construction of the original castle here, dating from the 10th century, around the time when he began consolidating power in the region. The castle was both a safe bolt hole and a residence, and served as a symbol of the power and authority of the counts. Fulk's family, fortified by infusions of fresh blood from other families, played a crucial role in the politics of medieval France, and would later produce many notable rulers, including the men known as the Plantagenets. Among Fulk's descendants, the most important might be Henry II, who was also King of England, along with his formidable wife and Queen Eleanor, who was Duchess of Aquitaine in her own right. Three of their four sons survived to adulthood. Their oldest boy, known to us as Richard the Lionhearted, and their youngest son each became kings. They were key figures in this storied lineage. Henry and Eleanor respected one another, I think, but they often disagreed. One of the biggest fights was over who would succeed Henry, who, when he was around 50, called for a Christmas court in Chinon, which we'll be visiting in a few weeks. Henry wanted his youngest boy, and arguably the weakest of the lot, to inherit, and Eleanor, who apparently didn't much like any of her sons, plumped for Richard. I think this was mostly because Henry didn't like Richard. We'll make the acquaintance of all these characters in greater detail in coming videos. What family doesn't have its disagreements? I'll keep the description box below updated to include more information about them as I create and post them on my WordPress blog. Today, however, we're going to just see the sights. Angers has a rich history, an impressive castle, a stunning cathedral, and some remarkable medieval architecture. It's also home to the dazzling Apocalypse Tapestry, which I think is mostly why people come to visit. This is a copy of a tiny fragment that I actually brought home with me. It shows us a rather dramatic scene of human beings being obliterated by what looks like a lava bomb. This is real fire and brimstone stuff, in my opinion. Kick back and run away from home with me, the armchair traveler, to walk around and talk about this lovely city and its fascinating history. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, all of which will encourage the YouTube algorithm, which I admit I do not understand, to show my videos to more people, and also so you'll know when I post new videos. Let's go on and start walking. Every family stronghold requires a castle, and the Plantagenet family in Angers were no exception. The Château d'Angers is a fortress clearly built for defense, with 10-foot thick walls, 17 watchtowers, and a moat that once encircled it, making it difficult for attackers to approach from the landward side, and sitting somewhat above the level of the river. Today, the moat has been filled in and the road around the castle follows its original path. Entering the castle requires you to cross over the dry moat, over a drawbridge, and through a massive gate and under a portcullis. When you walk under that portcullis, it's a bit scary if you think about it, even if you know it's blocked open. The walls are quite striking, made of alternating layers of limestone and dark slate known as schist. Schist is quite common in this area, and Angers is sometimes called the City of Slate. In the early 17th century, King Louis XIII ordered the towers to be shortened, around 1620, ostensibly to modernize the fortress and soften its appearance. I think the modernization was likely to make it less defensible and to deter rebellious nobles rather than outside invaders, especially during the Fronde, a series of civil wars in France. Over time, the castle adapted to changing requirements. Some defenses were removed and the moat was filled in to pave the streets for the growing town around it. The chateau even served as a military academy where the Duke of Wellington honed his tactics, which would eventually defeat Napoleon. During World War II, the German army occupied the castle as it did the rest of this area and used it partially as an ammunition depot. An explosion caused significant damage to the castle, possibly due to an accident or an Allied airstrike, or sabotage by resistance fighters. At this point, no one really knows. After the war, the castle was repaired, and a grand gallery was added underneath to showcase the stunning apocalypse tapestry. Sometimes when you visit a castle, all that's left are the towers and walls, but a castle is more than just walls, towers, and a moat. It always has to include accommodations, not just for the noble family that built it, but also for their retainers, servants, and the military charged with defending the place. It can also include office space for the bureaucracy that every noble required to actually run his holdings. This construction was part of a larger expansion and fortification of the chateau, which had begun in the 9th century and continued through the end of the medieval period. At first, there would have been the walls and towers, and inside a single tower or donjon, several stories high, and designed to house the ducal family, the retainers, and the soldiers. Over time, however, the residence required larger, nicer, more impressive accommodations, meant as much to impress anyone who happened by with their wealth and prestige and taste, as to provide for security. There would have been enormous fireplaces, the walls would have been decorated and insulated somewhat with tapestries, and a great deal more. The architectural style of this particular palace is primarily Gothic, characterized by features like pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and large windows that would have let in a lot of natural light. The man most associated with it was Duke René of Anjou, who was a significant patron of the arts and played a crucial role in the palace's development during his time. René was Duke from 1434 until his death in 1480. He was actually born here. This was his home, he knew it, and he loved it. He was a significant figure in the late medieval period, known for his claims to various titles and territories elsewhere, including the Kingdom of Naples. René was a patron of the arts and is remembered more for his contributions to culture and literature than anything else. René's taste ran toward Gothic, which was prevalent at the time. He supported various other forms of artistic expression, including painting, sculpture, and illuminated manuscripts. His court was a center for artistic activity, and he's known for promoting the creation of beautiful things. The main attraction here is the stunning apocalypse tapestry. The tapestry was originally pieced together from 90 separate panels that were woven, not embroidered like the so-called tapestry in Bayeux. You can see the scale of this thing in this official photograph from the tapestry website. It was commissioned in 1377 by Louis I, Duke of Anjou. By this time, the Plantagenets that we met earlier were gone from the picture, and the area was in firm French control. Louis I was the son of King John II of France and the younger brother of King Charles V. Despite the pedigree, I suppose that these French intruders were still resented by the local people. Louis commissioned the tapestry primarily as a demonstration of his power, wealth, and piety. The tapestry shows us scenes from the Book of Revelation, real wrath of God stuff in my opinion, and it was about far more than just religious piety. It let Louis show everyone who saw it his position, the strength of his position, his wealth, and his influence. I think Louis wanted to show posterity how important he was, even though he was a little brother, and in that he succeeded. Louis was around and present at some battles during the 100 Years' War, but he was never a battle commander or famous for his military prowess. The tapestry is his legacy. The tapestry was originally intended to be displayed right here in the castle, and in a way, the fact that it's underneath the castle in a special gallery today means that it's just come home. Eventually, however, a later duke donated it to the cathedral, where it was kept and displayed from time to time until the French Revolution, when it was hacked to pieces and parts of it destroyed. It was largely forgotten until the 19th century when it was rediscovered during some restoration effort here at the chateau itself. A museum curator and historian named Louis de Launay rediscovered the tapestry and put together what it was and how important it was. In the 20th century, particularly after World War II, significant restoration work was undertaken to repair and preserve the fabric. This included cleaning, repairing damaged sections, and reinforcing the fabric to make sure it would continue to last. I wasn't able to photograph it myself, but I was quite taken by this tiny sample, which was available in the form of woven tapestry in the museum shop. The red splash in the center of my sample is meant to represent the fire coming down from the hand of an angry god, though to me it looks like a lava bomb. Angers Cathedral is believed to have been built on or near the site of a Roman-era forum. Construction of the current building began in 1130 and continued well into the late 13th century, although work on the cathedral has been more on than off ever since. Most of the current structure was, however, completed sometime late 1480s. The Cathedral of Saint Maurice was called Angevin Gothic style, also known as Plantagenet Gothic style, and it was the first of its kind to be built in France. The west front, seen here in this Google Earth image, came later and shows just how massive the addition was. The cathedral actually sits substantially uphill from the river and is at least 3 American football fields back from the riverbank. The facade was built over several architectural periods. The lower sections are clearly Romanesque, featuring thick walls, rounded arches, and a Romanesque kind of portal or gateway. The western portal is quite plain with some regular arches, but this, from the eastern side, shows just how decorative this artistic style could be. Although the portal was covered up during my visit, I found a photo to show you the details. The tympanum, or semicircle above the doorway, shows us Christ in Majesty. Originally, it was apparently painted. Further up, we meet the Renaissance, including these statues of 8 knights, meant to represent the companions of Saint Maurice, to whom the cathedral is dedicated. The top level even includes a modern clock. The towers on either side are what's called flamboyant Gothic, which were known for their rich decoration and delicate asymmetry. Take a close look and you'll see they don't match. Inside we get a clue to how the Apocalypse tapestry probably was displayed during the time when it was stored here. In the 17th century, the interior of the church was rebuilt somewhat, making Angers Cathedral one of the first in France to redesign its interior following the directives of the Council of Trent. The idea was to create a more welcoming space for ordinary people by removing the intrusive, though often quite decorative, screens called rood screens, which are designed specifically to separate the clergy from the rest of the congregation. On the day I visited, a wedding was being celebrated here. In France, all weddings must take place first in City Hall to be legally binding. Religious ceremonies can follow, but they aren't legally recognized unless the civil service occurred first. The attire of the guests was just like it would have been at home and ranged from suits and ties through cutoffs. Although I couldn't understand a word of it, they ended the ceremony by singing a Mama and Papa's version of Michael Rowed His Boat Ashore. The song's theme is about a journey and togetherness, I guess, and it seems to go well with the idea of 2 people coming together in marriage. Sometimes buildings from the old days, however you choose to define that term, survive. Other times they disappear, like Old Penn Station in New York City. Still other times they survive, but with a new purpose and sometimes a very different form. This is Toussaint or All Saints Abbey. Construction began here around 1060 as a Benedictine monastery. The building reflects a mix of architectural styles. Fast forward to the French Revolution. During the French Revolution, a large number of churches, chapels, cathedrals, synagogues, and even monasteries were seized by the revolutionaries and converted into temples of reason. If you're curious about that process, you can read a separate WordPress blog. I'll put the link in the description box below. Toussaint Abbey was one monastery that suffered the conversion fate. While many of these seized properties were eventually returned to their original use, this one was not. In the years following the Revolution, the former abbey was used for all kinds of purposes and eventually remodeled into a cultural space. The refit included adding a glass roof, which you can see in this photo. Today, the former monastery houses the David d'Angers Gallery, dedicated to a famous local boy made good, 19th century sculptor David d'Angers, who was born right here in town. The gallery showcases a significant collection of plaster models he made preparatory to casting or carving his full-size creation. Unlike many artists, David was commercially successful during his own lifetime. He was recognized for his talent and skill as a sculptor, which got him plenty of commissions, both from public and private patrons. His works were well received, and he became known for his ability to create monumental sculptures, enormous things, as well as detailed portrait busts of prominent figures: George Washington, the Marquis de Lafayette, Goethe, Victor Hugo, Balzac, Paganini, and even Thomas Jefferson, whose statue stands today in the Rotunda of the U.S. Capitol, were all subjects for his creation. This is the Place du Ralliement. The name translates to gathering in English. The name reflects its historical role as a central gathering place for the community and probably a central market. Over time, it has evolved into a more civic and cultural space, but the legacy of its function as a market remains an important part of its history. Today, it continues to host various events and activities, and a Galerie Lafayette department store, along with plenty of places to sit down, sip a beverage, and people watch, including the pretty fountain and pool at one end. The square is mostly pedestrianized and has been for quite a while, but that doesn't mean that your average tourist can afford to lollygag, staring and not paying attention, since the modern city tram system runs right through the center of the square. While the tram cars may be new, the system has been here forever, as you can see in this picture postcard dating from the early 20th century. I was pretty busy gawking at the buildings and nearly fell into the depression for the tram. At one edge of the square you'll find the Grand Theater, which opened up in 1906. The facade of this Beaux-Arts beauty reminded me of some train stations, at least at first glance, many of which sport the same general style. The facade, ornate decorations, and impressive interior are quite eye-catching, including the painted ceiling in the concert hall. The ceiling is made of decorative frescoes that show various allegorical figures and scenes, reflecting themes related to the arts, music, and theater, which makes a lot of sense. It was designed to make visitors feel like they were guests in a palace, and I would say that the designer succeeded. Bits and pieces of medieval Angers in the form of half-timbered buildings soldier on in the city. This one is called Maison d'Adam, or Adam's House. It's half-timbered and quite a landmark. The building was originally constructed as a home for a wealthy merchant, reflecting the prosperity of Angers and the wealth of the owner himself. When I first thought it, I thought those windows were a strictly modern addition, and in terms of their size, they are. But in the 15th century, when this building was pitched up, it was common for the ground floor of buildings like this one to be occupied by a shop or commercial space. The practice was typical in urban areas where merchants could conduct business on the ground floor while living upstairs to make sure nobody stole anything. The ground floor provided for easy access for the customers and allowed the shopkeepers to show off their goods on a corner location. It had plenty of exposure to passersby and potential customers. The building is actually noted for its intricate wooden sculptures and decorative elements, like this tree of life, which was carved into the corner, along with various biblical and allegorical scenes, including figures from the Adam and Eve story, which is how it got its name. And speaking of shops, perhaps now is a good time to check out the local cuisine. Today, instead of food, we're going to indulge in Cointreau, a liqueur flavored with the oils of both sweet and bitter orange peels. It has quite a distinctive flavor. It is sometimes sipped as what the French call a digestif after a meal, but more commonly appears, at least in America, in the form of cocktails. It got quite a revival in America thanks to the television series Sex and the City. The ladies of the show had a taste for Cointreau, not in the original form straight up, but as an important part of a cosmopolitan cocktail. The liqueur also plays a starring role in flaming crêpe Suzette, a classic French dessert that features thin crêpes served with a flavorful sauce made from orange juice, orange zest, butter, and a splash of the orange liqueur to bolster the flavor. Getting it to flame without burning down the kitchen can be a bit tricky and requires more than the alcohol from the Cointreau itself. You make the sauce, heat it up, add a bit of brandy, and then set it alight. The last time I tried it, I think I might have put in a little too much brandy. As I recall, the flames jumped up at least 6 inches in the air. I did have sense enough to have my husband standing by with a pot lid to smother it when it seemed to be getting out of hand. You can never be too careful in these matters. Bon appetit! Come back next time and run away with me, the armchair traveler, as your guide.